Hi, everybody. We're going to wait a few minutes while people join us, and then we'll get started. Welcome. So I have about 2 minutes after, but we're going to give people maybe 30 more seconds or maybe 1 more minute to get in before we get started. My clock could be just a little bit fast. Okay. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this Tuesday afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. And we're so glad to have you today. This is a great topic, one of my favorite topics. As an old special ed teacher, I had to work with kids quite a bit over this notion of goal setting, so I'm excited about that. And I am Liz Simpson, and joining me today is John Wilson, the Executive Director of SOAR. So let's just jump right in there.
Hello, everybody.
Don't scare us.
I'm being productive.
Well, we'll see after this whether you're really being productive, but let's see how it goes. All right. So today we're going to talk about the power of productivity, and let's get started. Here we go. So the first thing we want to think about when we're talking about goal setting, and I think this is an important place to start always, is sort of a definition of terms so we're all on the same page. A goal is an idea of the future or desired result that a person or group of people envision, plan, and commit to achieve. So people endeavor to reach goals within a specific time by setting, specific deadlines. So those are sort of the components. First of all, I have to have a desire to do this thing in the future. That's important. That's really important. And as we go through, we're going to talk about why that's so important. And then I have to be able to envision what I'm looking for as that outcome, and I have to plan and then commit to the plan in order to achieve the goal. So when we break it down that way, we're going to be able to look at what sometimes causes our kids to stumble when they're trying to set a goal or when they're trying to reach a goal. And then once we know that, we can approach it in a way that is more supportive for the kids and will more likely lead to their success. Okay. And so these 2 second points I added because I think as we go forth in this together, we're going to realize that goal setting and achieving requires a pretty complex set of skills that can vary for each task. So I might envision something for myself, but the skills that the skills I need in order to succeed are pretty varied. And so I have to know how to attain skills. That's important, that I need. And then the good news is that the structure of the process of setting and achieving a goal, the structure of that process is the same each time, regardless of the goal. So I hope that makes sense. So why do kids with ADHD have difficulty with goal setting and even goal achieving. Why do we have problems with that? And number one is because we are a bit more hair trigger or impulsive than other folks. We tend to, when it comes into our head, we want to just go out with it. Here we go, let's go. Got this idea, I'm off. And the planning part and the goal setting part and even the consequences. So we need to think about when we set a goal, each goal has a consequence. We're assuming that consequence is positive, but sometimes it's not. So we need to think about that. But we don't. With ADHD, that is not inherent in our makeup, in our brain wiring. We can do it once we learn. Also, we tend to not be time dependent, folks. Okay, so we tend to not really know how to allocate time. Some of us are not even very aware of time. And when we do try to allocate time, we're off a little bit often. We don't allocate enough, we allocate too much, then we get bored, then we forget about it. So time is an issue with us, and time is a critical component of goal setting. So, and goal achieving. So for us, that's a problem. We are either flexible or literal thinkers. And that is very apparent when you talk to us. And I brought these words convergent and divergent thinkers, and we're going to talk about that in the next slide. But I want you to think about it that way, because flexible and literal, can sound kind of negative, and I don't mean it to. I really mean convergent and divergent. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. And then often, if I have ADHD, I may lack the skills that I need to reach this predetermined goal that I have decided for myself, because we have skill gaps, because we develop in spurts and we have skill gaps. So I may lack those skills. So I'm all excited, but I don't have the skills that I need. And then the other thing is, and it kind of goes with the time issue, we're typically very impatient. If we think of something, we want to do it right now. And even if we know we have to wait, we can only wait so long. And then we're impatient.
So that impatience, which we all recognize, and those of us with ADHD certainly have enjoyed what that means for us. but it's a double-edged sword, because while it allows us to, that impatience that we're looking for new opportunities, we're looking to jump in right away, and sometimes we can be very proactive when that happens, but it also detracts us from what we're trying to get to. And so it's not that we're terrible at setting goals. We can do some serious goal setting. Right?
And I'm going to talk about that next here in a minute.
It's that, it's that wonderful, what is it? My wife told me about a book, give a pig a pancake. And I'll mention that when we get to kind of that sort of distractible nature that sends us away from our goals.
Exactly. So that might be this next slide. So I wanted to share this notion about convergent and divergent thinking, and it looks fuzzy, and it didn't look fuzzy to me prior, so I apologize for that. But let's talk about this just for a minute. Convergent thinking means that I have a solution. I know where I'm going. So I set a goal and know where I'm going. And then with that goal, I look at the facts. What do I know? What do I don't know? Whatever. These guys are very, very good at setting goals. They are your linear thinkers. I've got to go from A to B. I'm going to need this, 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 and this to get there. And I'm going to get there. And B is going to look like this. They're very good. Divergent thinkers, which the world needs as well, are more of, we work off stimulus. We have a target. I want to, my latest thing was thinking about building an earth ship. It just goes to show you how divergent my thinking is. That's a house made out of the materials you can find in your yard. I was really considering that. So that was a stimulus for me. I was like, wow, could I build a house? Could I do that? And then I had all these ideas running through my head. Well, we could this, we could that, we could this, we could that. And my son, who is a very convergent thinker, kept trying to add to-dos to that. And it was really difficult for him. He was struggling. Mom, this is too big. You're too big. You know, what's your actual target? Where are you going with this? What's happening? And that's what happens to our kids. They get an idea, it gets too big too fast, and then they don't know where step one is. They don't know where step two is. They are great if they are in charge of the vision, that they are visionaries, that they're in charge of the big picture, they have got it. But they have got to have people, and this is an accommodation for a lot of people with ADHD, and the person who comes to mind is Richard Branson. Richard Branson, who owns, you know, Virgin Atlantic and all that, said one time, I just came up with the idea and then surrounded myself by the right people. And he knew he needed convergent thinkers rather than more divergent thinkers for specific tasks. So I want you to think about those two groups. We work well together, but we are entirely different. And so I just wanted to point that out. So when we get to setting goals, and I want you to keep that in your mind about different brains and how they work. Setting goals, when we're setting goals, that's a learned skill, especially for us divergent thinkers. I have to learn to set the goal. I have to learn to hit the target, okay? It needs to be practiced over time in multiple environments. So if I set a goal at school, that's one thing, but I need to set a goal at home. I need to set a personal goal. I might need to set a goal with somebody. I need to practice that, and we'll talk about that here in a minute as well. Here's the thing that sometimes frustrates parents, and that is goal setting is best learned when it's self-determined. So what I want you as a parent to do, this is going to be your homework after this, I want you to watch your child and see where they are setting their own personal goals. When and where are they doing that or trying to do that? Okay, and so, you know, a good example, if your kid is a video gamer, they will set personal goals for video gaming for sure. They do set personal goals about trying to find out information, you know, so they'll Google something all day long to find something. But little things like that, look for those goal setting opportunities, and then look for bigger things like, I'm going to eat more healthy. I've decided I'm going to eat more healthy, and watch them follow that through. Okay. So, and, you know, I don't need to remind this group of this, but, you know, SOAR does a wonderful job of helping the kids set goals the minute they walk in the door. And then everything else is sort of constructed around helping them meet that goal. And that's how it has to go for people who are helping kids learn to set goals. You have to be determined that you're going to help arrange that environment for them to find that success. So goal setting can be practiced on a daily basis. Just little bitty things. What's your goal for today? Well, today I'm going to try not to start the day with video games. Perfect. Let's see if we can do it. You know, so every day we're making small goals for ourselves. So be aware of those and supportive of those. Goal planning needs to become a habit due to all the small goals that make up a big goal. So another little homework assignment is to start using the language of goals when you're talking to your child. Just like I just said, what's your goal for today? How are you going to meet that goal? What's step one? I mean, just start adding that language in so that they see that their whole day is made up of goals and they're just sort of all strung together, okay? And then success depends on an accumulation of skills learned over time. So whether I am able to meet my goal or not is dependent on whether or not I have accumulated the skills needed to meet that specific goal. Okay. So this is the start of types of goals, but we have little goals and we have larger goals. We have immediate goals, reoccurring goals, short-term goals, long-term goals, and lifelong goals. Okay. And so when your child sets a goal, we want to triage that. Is that an immediate goal? Is that a reoccurring goal and we need to really just get a better handle on it? Is that a short-term goal, a long-term goal? What kind of goal is that? Is that a lifelong goal? Because we're going to approach each of those a little bit differently. The structure is going to stay the same, but we're going to approach each of those a little bit differently. And ultimately, we want our kids to make their own lifelong goals. So that's where we want them to go. So we need to, help them understand the different types of goals that they're going to be making over their lifetime. And then the triage part is when you identify your goal that you want to achieve, prioritize it. Okay, is this an urgent and necessary goal? And I did borrow this from Stephen Covey's time management quadrants. But it is important because sometimes we make goals that are not urgent and not necessary, and we don't follow through with them, right? Or they're necessary and not urgent, so we kind of put them on the back burner, okay? Urgent and not necessary, well, we're gonna have to follow through with that anyway. And urgent and necessary are the ones that we attend to. And John can tell you this as well, I believe, that we usually procrastinate on our goals until that last minute when it's urgent and necessary. Is that true, John?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we want to help kids think about how to work through that before they get to that point. So we're also kind of addressing procrastination as we go by looking at that possibility ahead of time.
And I'll tell you where, if you'll go back, Liz, I'll tell you where many of us live. And that is, we certainly find ourselves urgent and necessary, but just as often we find ourselves in the it feels very urgent, but it isn't necessary, and that is sort of the scourge of our existence, that we get caught up in the, oh, I've got to take care of this, when where you really want to be is in the necessary place. And ideally, we want to be necessary, not urgent, but that's not where we live. Covey, let's see, I think it's Hallowell who calls it an urgency addiction. All right, we are driven to the urgent, and so we're so attracted to the thing that has to happen right now, because either it's got big teeth or it just gets our attention, and it won't leave us alone until we manifest whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish.
Exactly. And that can go smoothly, or it can be a struggle. So we're going to see if we can give you the tools to make that go smoothly today. The other thing that Rick Lavoie talked about when he was with us earlier is about motivation. And so you have to be motivated to reach your goals. It's important. And what starts motivation is you have a problem that you need to solve, right? Then you become motivated to look at that problem and possibly solve it, especially if you've labeled it a problem. And so that will start the motivation chain. And then the next thing is, what are my choices for solving the problem? And you kind of, in that point of decision, you kind of see whether or not you have any choices that really connect to who you are and who your skill set, what your skill set is and what your strengths are. And if it does connect, if you have a choice that connects, then you might be more motivated, right? And then the other one is, what are the likely consequences in the worst case scenario? So if I shoot for this goal, what are the likely consequences, that I'll make it? Is it relevant? Is it reasonable? Is it attainable? And what's the worst case scenario if I don't? Okay, because that will derail us pretty quick. If I think that the worst case scenario is not that big of a deal, then I might drop the whole thing, right? I could take that It's not a bad deal. But if I think the worst case scenario is going to really blow me out of the water, I'm going to be a little bit more motivated. I want to go towards that positive consequence, right? So I think Rick sort of said it like this: am I invested? Is the payoff something I care about? And so when we want our kids to set a goal or follow a goal, and we're going to talk about that in a minute too, different types of goals, is the payoff something that they care about? Is it relevant to me? Is the job, activity, relationship, effort relevant to me and my future goals? Because it's going to add all up to my long-term goals. What need does it meet for me? And what's the purpose? Does meeting this goal further my purpose in life, or what I perceive my purpose in life to be? Does this goal help me get there? And that's the kind of thing we ask ourselves all along the way. So, but we also have to ask ourselves about the consequences. Okay, just like I said before, that good consequence or the worst case scenario, we need to think about that. So with our kids, when we're going through this goal setting process, which I'm going to talk about here in just a second, we need to help them understand what the consequences are going to be, the good choice or the choice that will get them there more efficiently versus the choice that may sabotage the effort. Okay. So a consequence is the result of an action, but there's also a consequence for inaction. So let's say I set a goal, I'm working towards it, it got hard, I quit, but now I've not attained that goal. There is a consequence for inaction. Natural consequences or self-imposed consequences are best. So if I say, okay, I've come up on this challenge, I could quit, but instead, I'm going to start over from the beginning and try again. That's a self-imposed consequence. I'm deciding how I'm going to reboot. So I've already anticipated that barrier or that consequence, that barrier, that challenge, and I've set my own consequence for if I get to that point. Okay, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. And this is something you've heard me say a lot. Decision-making usually happens with a choice. You take an action, there's a consequence, you evaluate it, and you make another choice. For our kids, because of that impulsivity and so forth, they go action, consequence, evaluation, choice, you know, because they don't start with understanding that choice and that consequence before that action. Okay, that's that impulsive part.
It's like the big hole in the ground, and we're so distracted by everything around us, we don't see the big hole in the ground, and we walk into it, which is very different than, hey, look, there's a hole, I'm going to jump into the hole, I want to see what's in there, right?
Right.
And so, you know, and I think about consequences and creating a consequence-based way to help kids achieve a goal. And I will tell you that nothing has been more successful in the Wilson household than the kids want to do something. They want to have a friend over, they want to go and do something, and we say, well, tell you what, if you get this, this, and this done, then absolutely we get to do that thing. And then they're motivated. And having guests at the house is a big one because it's the only time their rooms get cleaned if they're going to have friends over. And so you can use the consequence of getting the thing that you want just as miraculously, or even more so, than the negative consequence for not achieving the desired result.
That's right. That's exactly right. And again, you're using that language of if you do step 1, step 2, step 3, here you will reach your goal. And you're just adding that in naturally as it bubbles up. And that is beautiful because it helps us to sort of seed in these processes. And here's the other thing, and John just sort of mentioned it, and I had mentioned it briefly earlier, there are types of goals. So there's individual goals, which is personal goal, or an independent goal. So let's say a personal goal is I'm going to walk 4 miles every day rather than the 3 miles that I walk every day. That's a personal goal. I want to do that. And I would set my own consequences if I don't do that, and all of that. An independent goal is a goal that I want to learn to do by myself. I want to be able to be in charge of this for myself. So an independent goal might be researching colleges or studying what jobs are open or available. I'm going to do that. I want to do that because I want it to match with me. That's an independent goal. Group goals are family goals, and we've talked about that a lot when you talk about family constitutions and family meetings and so forth. You would set a family goal, and that's when you're on a team and you have a goal. So also, you know, if you're on a team, soccer goal or baseball or, you know, whatever. And then community goals. So we have goals in the community. That's cleanup day. If you're cleaning up the highway or whatever, you're helping the community with that goal. And that's beautiful. But the main thing that's really critical when you're setting a goal or when you're trying to help your child reach a goal, the first thing you have to notice is whether that is a self-determined goal or an imposed goal. So a lot of times we have trouble with kids doing goals that we think ought to just be automatic and natural because they are imposed goals. And school is a perfect example of that. Okay, so if your teacher says, I want you to, and this happened to me when my kids were in school, you need to finish this word search and something else that wasn't relevant to my child, that didn't seem to make any sense, that was not a goal of theirs, and that was also difficult for them. They didn't have the skills to be able to do that word search. And so they just went, nope, not gonna do it. So imposed goals often are not followed because they lack that relevance, that connection to the child's strengths, that purpose, and all of that. So we have to help our kids get past some of those imposed goals by going back up to the individual goals and saying, well, really, what is your goal in school? What do you want to accomplish? Let's see if there are ways that we can do that. And working it back through their own strengths and their own purpose so that they can see a little bit more relevance in those imposed goals. Does that make sense? So I said that all of that is going to be a little more difficult, but here's the structure of a goal, of a good goal. And that is, and some of you are probably familiar with this acronym as well, but they need to be specific. And for our kids, specificity is important. Exactly what needs to be done, exactly what is your goal, what is the plan. They need to be measurable, they need to be achievable, and either it's achieved or not achieved or overachieved or underachieved or not quite, whatever. But we've got to have some standard where we're measuring that progress towards that goal, okay? And it needs to be realistic, it needs to be doable. And my children pointed out to me that my Earth House idea was not doable. And so I had to give it up. That was having fun for a hot minute. Anyway, is it realistic and is it doable? And then the other one is time bound. It does need to be time bound. We need to learn to live within that time limit. And so we want it to have some time parameters. Otherwise, it just becomes nebulous. It just gets further away from our vision, right? We just don't see it after a while.
I would also say that in order for it to be a good goal, that there would have to be investment and buy-in.
Yes.
And
yes.
The other thing that you're going to want to do is when you impose all of these external features, that you're the one who's made it specific, you're the one who's made it measurable,
Oh,
You're the one
yeah.
that's talked about how achievable it is, or how realistic it is, and what the time frame is going to look like. When you do those things for them, you create a scenario in which it's very likely there's not going to be empowerment or buy-in. But when you work through that process with them, it
Yeah.
absolutely begins to form. And you know, Rick Lavoie was when he joined us, he talked a little bit about the social autopsy, and he talked a little bit about, you know, how we break things down. And so we end up becoming the guides that nurture the discussion process, and we're asking leading questions, but but if you really want to get this done effectively, they are the ones who are coming up with the plan and the answers and the specifics about how they're going to achieve those things. I'm going to tell a quick story from last night. My goal was for my daughter to empty out the cat bin. It's her cat, and I'd been asking her to do it for a week, and she continued to find reasons not to. And so yesterday she finally did it, and she dumped all of the cat litter into a trash can that didn't have a bag in it. And so, and so then she left it in the kitchen to stink up the kitchen because now it wasn't in her room anymore. So I said, you know what, you're going to have to bag that, and you're going to have to, and she says, will you help me? And I said, no, I will not help you. She said, why do you have to make everything so difficult? And my answer was, because the next time you empty the litter box, you won't be thinking about what is the shortest, easiest way to do this. You'll be thinking about, I don't want to have to clean up this mess. And then further, she had to go clean the trash can. And so those consequences and the fact that she had to endure those things will hopefully set up the next time a goal is created, that that she will buy in. And from a timing and sequence standpoint, it makes a ton of sense when the right time to do something is and how to get that accomplished. So what we did there was we're setting up for the next time. All right.
Yeah.
And when you practice, and this is my favorite George Bushism, when you practice that type of strategery, eventually you're going to get someplace.
That's right. That's right.
That's
good.
My goal.
Yes, and that, to be thinking about your goal as a parent, that's very important. And it is, again, to help them be able to have the skills to set their own lifelong goals and be successful. And so I love that. I love that you emphasized again this notion of self-determined goals versus imposed goals. And if it is self-determined, or even if it is imposed, they're going to have that ownership to set these pieces that we're going into right now. So this is not something that you need to do for them. This is something that they're going to be able to do on their own. We're going to help them. And so how to write a goal. State the goal in positive language. I will be able to, I will take the cat box out every Thursday and empty it and leave a liner in every Thursday each week, as long as I have this cat. Okay. So be precise as possible, date, time, amount, however you're going to do it, make it very, very precise. List the skills that you need to complete the task, and skills can also be materials or whatever. So I'm going to need a trash bag, I'm going to need this, I'm going to have to take it outside, whatever. Anticipate any barriers or challenges, and that's what we were talking about earlier. Anticipate what those challenges might be, so that you can get there and get that done. And if you don't get it done, you can address the challenge in a way that you can overcome it for next time. John just let her walk right into the challenge. And now and his anticipation is that she's going to fix that and redo it for next time. Have someone else hold you accountable if possible. It's always nice to have a buddy when you're setting a goal. That's beautiful. Measure often and keep results visible. We need visible indicators that we're on the right track. Very important, visible indicators. And then celebrate your success daily, weekly, quarterly, etc. So let's look at some examples that our kids might have as goals. So driving a car might be one. Living on my own might be one. Getting a job might be one. And going to college might be one. And I say might be one, and because I want you to always kind of reflect, is this my goal for them or is this their goal? Because it puts the effort into a totally different container if it's my goal for them or if it's their goal. Okay.
Liz, you have always been such a wonderful champion with so many of our young people about that, you know, as young men and women are moving into that transition zone in their lives when they are going to need to take and make more decisions for themselves. And again, it's you know, at some point you're no longer in the driver's seat. You're you know, you're there as a guide, you're there as a sage, you're there to ask advice but not force the advice. And at some point kids have to start being able to learn the skills necessary to make those decisions for themselves. It's really difficult, especially when they're making decisions that you don't necessarily buy into, or they're not the decision you would make.
Yes, it's very difficult. And if your child is not at this transition age, I suggest you start working on that goal setting using the same techniques, asking them what their goal is, asking them how they're going to measure it, ask them what are they going to do if they run into a hiccup. All of that at any age, so that because it's a lifelong learning experience to be able to set goals for your life and drive, you know, be in the driver's seat. So looking at these examples, let's take one and break it down so you can kind of see. First, you triage the goals. So I was looking at this as like, this would be a group of goals, right? I want to do all of these things, but what would need to come first, right? So what would be first, second, third, fourth? So maybe driving a car would want to come before you get a job, unless you have some other way to get there, because that's going to be important. Maybe going to college would come before living on your own. You would live with others and learn how living away from home is before you live actually on your own. So looking at that as a progression, you can see how you can, you know, put it into order, because when we take a goal here in a second, we're going to break it down into those kinds of steps, into that kind of order. And this is just important. We want to know the prerequisite skills of the learner and the materials they need to reach that goal. So, and we also need to break the skills for reaching that goal into discrete steps. So what I mean by that is you're not going to get, well, let's talk about driver's licenses. When you go to get your driver's license, they automatically check whether you can see peripherally, because that's a prerequisite skill. Although I have known a girl who was legally blind to get her driver's license, and she was very, very creative in doing that. And it scared her, so she never used it, but she just loved having it. But anyway, so there are prerequisite skills. So we need to assess, do we have those skills? And then we need to break everything down into steps. So let's just pick out getting a job, okay? Which is going to be a little tricky at the moment. This summer is kind of crazy, but in general, we can plan ahead. So let's say your child says, I want to get a job working outside, we're being specific, with kids, making at least $15 an hour, averaging about 30 hours a week, starting September 1st. That's what I want to do. That's my goal. I'm going to do that. And now automatically, watch yourself, Mom, you're thinking, well, wait a minute, that's during the school year, and we have to put a lot of effort on school, and I don't know, and no. If they want to get a job after school, trust me, it might be just the key that turns them on to paying more attention to school. So don't prejudge that. Don't worry. Don't let fear jump in. But let's say this is their goal. This is your child's goal. That's what they want to do. So what will you do? You're going to help them identify the steps that they need to do to get that job. So they need to be able to say, I will need to complete these steps in order to reach that goal. And these are really sub-goals. I call them the steps, they're really actually sub-goals. So the first one is find a job. Okay, so that has a lot of components, right? Where am I going to find a job? Is that going to be on Indeed.com, or is that going to be in the newspaper, or am I going to ask people? I'm just going to go knock on a door and get an application? They have to make lots of decisions right there. And they need to identify that. What's your first step for finding a job? How are you going to go about that? Then you need to apply for the job. Is that online? Is it pen and paper? Do you type it online and print it out? What are you going to have to do with that? So you can do all of these things, Mom. This is what you need to be doing with them per step. And then they're going to get hired, okay? Work through the summer, great. Save money so I can pay my rent, great. These are the big components of the large goal. Big components, large goal. Now, we're going to talk about the possible challenges. So, but what if there's no jobs available in your field? Meaning there's no jobs available working outside with kids after school. If you were in Wyoming, that would be a problem, honestly. You wouldn't be working outside, number one. You might be working with kids, but not outside during the school year. Or another possible challenge would be, I'm not qualified for the jobs available. I have to have my high school degree. I have to, whatever, I'm just not qualified. Another possible challenge is that you see a job you really want, you go for it, and there's no fallback options. They're not hiring now, or they can't use you at the moment. There's no fallback option. Next, I might need a car. Maybe I need a car if I'm working with kids outside. I need a car, or at least I need a license, and I don't have those. So that's a possible challenge. Or the job I want doesn't pay enough. So maybe it pays $9 rather than $15. It's an entry-level job. Am I going to do that? Am I not going to do that? I'm going to compromise what I'm going to do. So you want to address each of those possible challenges. Then you want to outline the skills I need to do in order to get to those points. So again, all of these things are things that you're bringing forth from your child to help them set this goal and achieve this goal. So you're going to help them identify the skills that they need for this job. And make it a checklist. Write it down, then make it a checklist. You're going to identify job readiness skills, identify skills, my personal skills and strengths, identify my personal challenges and possible barriers, fill out an application, identify and practice interviewing skills, navigate transportation to and from work, open a bank account and be responsible for that. Let your child open the bank account. And I'm sure you're doing that, but sometimes we want to just add them to ours, and it's real easy, and here you go. I did both. Anyway, and then create a budget and talk about how you're going to manage that budget. Okay, so these are the skills I need. Break it down. Identify my job readiness skills. I'm going to do that before applying for a job. That was number one on last page. Identify job readiness skills. Okay, better if we say it more specifically. I'm going to identify my job readiness skills before applying for a job Wednesday, August 1st. That's when I'm going to apply for this job. Okay, write all the skills down that you've identified. Create a resume from those skills. So now you'll know if you're really job ready. Find a format online, going to do that. Find people who can act as references, who've witnessed my skills and abilities, because I'm going to need that to get the job, right? Identify any accommodations you might need on the job. So if I have an LD in, let's say, reading, then I might need for them to record things that I need to read if it's very lengthy, or give me things in PDF so I can use my screen reading app to access that information. So if there's a manual, an employee manual, I need that in a PDF so I can have that read to me. Okay, so know what accommodations that you need. Okay, and then the last one is celebrate your success. So I've taken us from big to smaller chunks to taking that chunk and then even breaking it down more and then checking them off. So now I can have daily successes, weekly successes, and monthly successes. I'm having successes all the way along the way as I'm going towards that big goal. I'm not just putting the goal out there and trying to reach it from way back here. I've got it all so broken down that even if nothing else, I can check off, write down all my skills.
Go back one slide, Liz.
Yeah.
So to successes.
Mm-hmm.
To celebrate successes.
Oh yeah, that was the wrong way. Sorry. Whoops. Here we go. There we go.
All right. So I want to ask all of you a really important question, and that's this: what motivates you to accomplish something? And you know what we've known for many years here at SOAR is that success is truly one of the most remarkable motivators. You know, coaches with young kids know it because they start creating skills where you can become successful at a skill before building on a new skill. And so think of the daily successes as rewarding and building on those skills that lead to weekly attainment of goals and objectives, which lead to bigger goals and objectives. The more opportunity that you create, a way that you can acknowledge what you're doing and how successful it's being and really understand the impact that it's making, the more likely you as a human being are going to continue to try and utilize those same skills again in the future. And the same is exactly true for your child.
That's right. That is exactly right. And I want to bounce off of that. We have a question from Amy who says, even though I don't rescue my son, he doesn't seem to learn from his mistakes. For example, the cat litter example, then what? And my answer is going to be that and I appreciate that you're not rescuing him, but you have to you have to hold that line and you have to let him practice over and over and over again. And you have to remind him how clever he is, that he can come up with a solution to not run into this again, and have him tell you what some of those choices for not running into this challenge again might be. So don't assume that he learned something. Have him verbalize, okay, this happened this time, seemed to happen again this time. Is there any way we're going to go into this again, on Tuesday? Is there any way we could avoid that challenge of having this happen again? So front load the challenge, have him brainstorm with you the consequences, and then see if he can come up with a new way to try that again. John?
Yeah, it really is all about processing and framing, and so, one of the reasons that he doesn't learn from his mistakes is because, most likely he's impulsively just jumping into whatever it is that he's jumping into again. And so the ways you reinforce and change that behavior are exactly what Liz said. You get together and you say, hey, what happened last time? All right, where were we successful? Where were we not successful? And actually, maybe it starts with upon the conclusion of working through a challenge. Like and I use the kitty litter scenario with my daughter. We sat down and we said, okay, what went wrong? Well, I didn't look and see where the trash bags were. And then what happened? And then, so I dumped it in the trash and you made me clean up my mess. And then what happened? Well, I asked you to help me and you wouldn't. And why not? Because sometimes you like making things difficult for me. That's right. And why do I like making things difficult for you? And then this is what she said. So I'll learn my lesson. And I said, well, did you learn your lesson? She said, I think maybe that I did. And then I said, well, what are you going to do next time? She said, well, I'll make sure. And she listed off the things that she would do next time. All right. So now we We've had the event, we've processed the event, and then what we're going to do next time is we're going to frame, okay, hey, that task is coming up again. What are we going to do that's going to allow us to be more successful? And then brainstorm and work through that. And then at the end of that sequence, guess what? We're going to process that again, because is there something that we learned? And that is the healthiest way that I can think of reinforcing the lessons. Have the conversation after the fact when people aren't frustrated or angry, then frame it the next time.
And that is, by doing that, you're creating that voice in their head. That's what I said at the beginning. Starting with using this language as you're going through, you're creating that voice in their head so that next time they go, whoa, what might be the consequence? Right before she's pouring it, whoa, do I have a liner? Do I have a liner? Whoa, you know, it's going to come up. If we don't process it, it won't come up, because it's not being attended to, right? It's the notion that this could be a problem is not being attended to. Just like John said brilliantly with the hole in the ground. It's not that we're purposefully jumping in the hole, it's just we're not attending to it at all. And so you kind of have to plant that seed. It looks like we might have a question or two.
Yeah, Amy said, I like your answer. Mine kind of shuts me down. Okay, sorry, Mom, I'll try harder, but I will keep trying. Hey, you know what, Amy? The same thing happens with my daughter, Landry, and my son. Okay, yeah, fine. I'll work harder. I'll try harder. The secret is in the details, right? And the secret is, you know, maybe we're not having the conversation right there by the trash can. Maybe instead we're going for a walk. Maybe instead, we're doing something on the trampoline and she does, you know, a flip, and I say, okay, quick, tell me, you know, and then we find a way to make that processing a little bit more fun, a little bit more creative. I
would say, John, and I don't mean to interrupt, but it's not about trying harder. Because, you know, we can try as hard as we want, but you want them to try smarter.
you do, but you know, but I think the other thing that I have come to realize is that, you know, my kids aren't going to be generically or intrinsically motivated to do things like that, right? And so, how do I manage them when they're not motivated to try? Which kind of leads to Lauren's goal question. How do you keep your kids to stick to their goals? And the real answer to that is, you know, the juice has to be worth the squeeze. The juice, the reward of accomplishing the goal has to be significant enough that they're going to want to put forth that effort. Because, you know, we haven't talked about this in a while, Liz, but let's go over a kid's job description. All right, this is their job description. Number one, to have as much fun as possible. Number two, to not get embarrassed in front of other people. And number three, to get away with as much as they can get away with. So what part of achieving the goals that you set for them are in those three job descriptions? They're not, right? To do the least amount possible would be a fourth in there. And so, you know, as we try and encourage and nurture young men and women to start owning some of those things, it becomes the process of how you achieve that on a consistent basis is what's going to allow you to be successful. Liz, it seemed like there was something you wanted to say.
I do, and I think the answer is, you know, for me, at least what we were talking about today is again, and you were just about to hit on it, is the notion of making sure that the goals that they're setting are self-determined. There are some goals that we have to do that are imposed on us in work, in school, you know, in the world. There are those. But even with those, have them back up and around and say, what part of this goal can you really relate to? Is there any value for you in this goal? And how can we make it valuable for you as well? And so, you know, using a school example, if your child is all into let's say, animals and wants to be a veterinarian, how can we tie that imposed goal back to that longer goal of wanting to be a veterinarian? Well, you know, this may not be fun to do right now, but I think we're going to need those points in order to get into vet school. So let's try that. But try to build that relevance in. Self-determination and relevance and purpose. Very, very important.
Lauren asked if we have courses to help kids, you know, do goal setting. And, you know, I'm so sad to say that that is so much of what we do during the summertime in our courses. We offer, you know, opportunities to set and achieve goals, and then work through that process and then learn from those things. So we may, you know, stay posted, Lauren. We may have a webinar here in the next few weeks in which I will create a opportunity for kids to work through a goal.
Yeah, fun. Love those ideas. Keep those ideas coming. Beautiful.
And then
so I hope
Pierre just wrote prioritize lists, urgent and necessary. What about processing time? You know?
Yeah. That's our problem, is we don't have that built-in voice in our head that allows us those few minutes of processing time. You know, even just identifying, well, okay, this is a goal. I need to step back. What's my steps for goals? What do I need to know about this goal? What skills do I need? What are the possible consequences? You know, that has to be taught. And if we use these skills, that will be taught, and that will expand that processing time a little bit more. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. You know, as usual, we would love to have your feedback if this was helpful to you or whatever. If it wasn't, if you have suggestions for next time, always let us know. John, it's been fun. I always love hearing about the kids, and they're just fantastic kids. And so everybody take care. And we have, I'm going to do a webinar next Tuesday on building rapport with your kids, because a lot of what we talked about today has to do with that communication and that trust and communication. And so we're going to be talking about that next Tuesday. Stay tuned.
In the meantime, Lauren, you've just put up another question, and please email me, bigjohn@sorenc.org, and let's talk about what you're looking for. Liz, as always, and folks, Liz's time with us is coming to a close. I think next week is your last webinar with us. And so, you know, tune in. It's going to be a good one.
But I have some plans bubbling around as well. So, I'll always be here. But we'll talk to you next Tuesday. Thank you again, John. See you later.